The mirror had become Jessica's enemy. Every morning for the past 2 years, 16-year-old Jessica Parker would stand in her bathroom, staring at the reflection that still didn't feel like her own. The left side of her face remained unchanged. Smooth skin, bright hazel eyes, the same features she'd inherited from her mother. But the right side told a different story, painted in pink and white scars that mapped the path of flames that had forever altered her life. The house fire had happened on a Tuesday night in October, 2 weeks before her 15th birthday. Jessica had been asleep when faulty wiring in the kitchen sparked a blaze that spread faster than anyone could have imagined. Her father had gotten her mother and younger brother out first, then gone back for Jessica, finding her unconscious from smoke inhalation in her bedroom. The ceiling beam that fell as he carried her out had been burning, and though it saved her life by shielding her from worse flames, it left its mark across the right side of her face and neck. The doctors had called her lucky. Burns this severe could have been fatal, they'd said. You're fortunate to be alive. Jessica understood their medical perspective, but luck felt like a foreign concept when you were a teenager whose face had been fundamentally changed. Lucky felt like something that happened to other people, people who didn't have to endure stares from strangers, whispered conversations that stopped when she walked by, and the constant internal battle between gratitude for survival and grief for the girl she used to be. The physical healing had taken months. Skin grafts, physical therapy, treatments that were often more painful than the original injury. But the emotional healing was proving to be a much longer journey. Jessica had withdrawn from her friends, quit the drama club she'd loved, and spent most of her time at home, venturing out only when absolutely necessary. Her family, parents Linda and Robert, and her 13-year-old brother Tyler, had been incredible throughout her recovery. They'd never made her feel different or damaged. They'd encouraged her to return to normal activities, supported her through therapy, and consistently reminded her that her scars didn't define her worth. But at 16, when your social world revolves around appearance and fitting in, their love and support, while precious, couldn't completely shield her from the reality of how the world saw her now. The Family Feud opportunity had come through Jessica's aunt, who worked for a local charity organization. The show was featuring families who had overcome significant challenges, and someone had nominated the Parkers as an example of resilience and family strength. Jessica's first reaction had been absolute panic.
I can't go on television,
She told her mother, her hand instinctively moving to cover the scarred side of her face. Everyone will stare. Everyone will see. Linda had sat beside her daughter on the couch, choosing her words carefully. Sweetheart, people are going to see a beautiful, brave young woman who survived something terrible and is still here to tell the story. They're going to see a freak, Jessica had replied, the harsh word hanging in the air between them. Is that what you see when you look at other burn survivors? Linda had asked gently. When you see pictures of people who've overcome trauma, is freak what comes to mind? Jessica had paused, realizing her mother was right. When she saw other people with visible differences, she admired their courage, their strength, their refusal to hide. But somehow, she couldn't extend that same compassion to herself. What if this is a chance to help other people who are going through what you went through? Linda had continued. What if your story could make someone else feel less alone? That conversation had been 3 weeks ago, and now Jessica found herself in the Family Feud studio, wearing a purple sweater that Tyler had picked out because he said it brought out her eyes, and a carefully applied foundation that minimized but didn't hide her scars. She'd made a decision not to try to cover herself completely. The scars were part of her story now, and pretending they didn't exist felt like living a lie. The Parker family team consisted of Jessica, her parents, Tyler, and her cousin Amanda, who was Jessica's age and had always been more like a sister. Amanda had been Jessica's biggest supporter throughout her recovery, never treating her differently and consistently challenging Jessica's negative self-talk. Steve Harvey noticed Jessica immediately during the pre-show warm-up. There was something about her careful posture, the way she positioned herself to show her good side to the cameras, the subtle but obvious self-consciousness that spoke of someone still learning to be comfortable in her own skin. But there was also something else, a quiet strength, an intelligence in her eyes, a warmth that came through despite her obvious discomfort. Jessica, Steve said, during introductions, approaching her with the gentle energy he reserved for contestants who seemed particularly nervous. "How are you feeling today, sweetheart?" Jessica's hand moved slightly toward her face before she caught herself and stopped it. "I'm nervous, Mr. Harvey," she said honestly, "but I'm glad to be here with my family." Steve nodded, sensing there was more to her story, but not wanting to push. "Well, you look beautiful today. That purple is definitely your color." The compliment hit Jessica unexpectedly, and her eyes filled with tears before she could stop them. She'd become so focused on what she perceived as her flaws that genuine compliments felt almost foreign. The game began against the Rodriguez family from Texas, and both teams proved to be competitive. Jessica was quieter than the others initially, more observant, but when she did speak up with answers, they were thoughtful and often correct. She had clearly studied for this, approaching the game with the same careful preparation she brought to everything now. Steve found himself drawn to Jessica throughout the game. There was something about her combination of vulnerability and strength that reminded him of his own daughters at that age. The way teenagers could be so hard on themselves while being so much stronger than they realized. It was during the fourth round that the question came that would change everything. "We surveyed 100 people," Steve announced. "Name something that makes someone beautiful." Jessica was at the podium. The question felt like the universe's idea of a cruel joke, putting her with her scarred face and complicated relationship with beauty in the position of defining what beauty meant. She looked back at her family, then at the audience, then at Steve. For a moment, she considered giving a safe answer, something like smile or personality that would get points without revealing anything personal. But something about being on this stage, about representing her family, about the possibility that someone watching might be struggling with their own scars, made her choose honesty. "Kindness that shows in your actions," she said clearly. Steve's eyebrows raised with genuine interest. "Kindness that shows in your actions. That's beautiful, Jessica. Tell me more about that." Jessica took a deep breath, realizing she'd opened a door she wasn't sure she was ready to walk through. "I think real beauty isn't about how you look," she said, her voice gaining strength. "It's about how you treat people. It's about whether you make others feel good about themselves. It's about the love you give and the difference you make in people's lives." The studio had grown quieter, sensing that something profound was happening. "When I see beautiful people," Jessica continued, "I don't just see their faces. I see their hearts. I see their kindness. I see the way they light up rooms and make other people feel valued." Steve set down his cards and approached Jessica directly. Something in her words, in the conviction behind them, told him there was a deeper story here. "Jessica," he said gently, "that's one of the most mature definitions of beauty I've ever heard. Can I ask you something personal?" Jessica nodded, though her heart was racing. "Have you had to learn that definition the hard way?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Jessica could deflect, could keep her story private, could protect herself from the vulnerability of truth. Instead, she chose courage. "2 years ago, I was in a house fire," she said, her voice steady despite the tears beginning to form. "I survived, but," she gestured slightly toward the scarred side of her face, "I look different now. For a long time, I thought that meant I wasn't beautiful anymore." The studio fell completely silent. Steve's expression shifted from gentle curiosity to deep compassion. "I spent 2 years hiding from mirrors, from cameras, from people," Jessica continued. "I thought my scars made me ugly. I thought they made me damaged. I thought they made me less than the person I used to be. And now?" Steve asked softly. Jessica's voice cracked slightly. "I'm still learning to believe that beauty is more than what you see on the surface. Some days, I believe it. Some days, I don't. Today, I'm trying to believe it." Steve Harvey, who had heard thousands of stories over his years of hosting, found himself completely moved by Jessica's raw honesty. He looked at this 16-year-old girl who had just shared her deepest vulnerability on national television, and he saw something extraordinary. "Jessica," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I need you to listen to me very carefully. Your scars don't take away from your beauty, they add to it. They tell the story of your strength. They show that you're a survivor. They prove that you're tougher than anything life threw at you. Jessica was crying now, but she maintained eye contact with Steve. But more than that, Steve continued. The beauty you just described, kindness in action, making people feel valued, lighting up rooms. That's exactly what you're doing right now. You're showing everyone watching that courage looks like showing up, even when you're scared. You're teaching people that beauty is about character. You're making every person with scars feel less alone. The audience began to applaud, but Steve held up his hand, indicating he wasn't finished. Your parents didn't raise a victim, he said firmly. They raised a warrior, and warriors have battle scars. Those scars don't make you less beautiful. They make you more beautiful because they show what you've overcome. Jessica sobbed openly. Now, years of pain and self-doubt pouring out. But Mr. Harvey, she whispered, what if people can't see past them? What if all they see is the damage? Steve approached her and, without hesitation, gently placed his hands on her shoulders. Baby girl, he said, anyone who can't see your beauty is blind. And their blindness is not your problem. Your job isn't to make other people comfortable with your scars. Your job is to live your life fully, love completely, and remember that you are exactly who you're supposed to be. The audience erupted in applause, but Steve continued. I want you to do something for me, he said. I want you to look into that camera and tell every young person who's watching and struggling with their own scars, physical or emotional, what you want them to know. Jessica looked at the main camera, tears still flowing, but her voice strong and clear. You are not your scars, she said directly to the lens. You are not your trauma. You are not defined by the worst thing that happened to you. You are beautiful because of your heart, your strength, your ability to keep going when things get hard. Don't let anyone, including yourself, convince you otherwise. The standing ovation that followed was thunderous, but what moved Jessica most was seeing her family crying with pride. Amanda giving her a thumbs up, and Tyler holding up a sign he'd made that read, "My sister is beautiful inside and out." Steve reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his business card. Jessica, he said, you have a gift for inspiring people. If you ever want to share your story to help others, you call me. The world needs to hear from young people like you, who understand what real beauty means. Then Steve did something that would become one of the most memorable moments in Family Feud history. He removed his suit jacket and approached Jessica. This jacket has been with me through thousands of shows, he said. But today, it belongs to someone who taught me something new about beauty. You wear this, and remember that you're not just beautiful, you're extraordinary. As Steve draped his jacket over Jessica's shoulders, she felt something she hadn't experienced in 2 years. Complete acceptance of herself exactly as she was. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you, Steve replied, for showing all of us what courage looks like. The episode aired 8 weeks later and immediately went viral. The clip of Jessica's definition of beauty was shared millions of times. But more importantly, it started conversations about beauty standards, about treating people with visible differences with kindness, about the strength required to survive trauma. Jessica received thousands of messages from other burn survivors, people with visible differences, and young people struggling with self-acceptance. But the message that meant the most came from a 13-year-old girl who wrote, I have a birthmark on my face that I've always hated. But after seeing you, I realize that my differences don't make me ugly. They make me unique. Thank you for helping me see that. The response wasn't universally positive. There were cruel comments online, people who focused on her appearance rather than her message. But Jessica found that the negative voices seemed smaller now, less powerful, because she'd found her voice and discovered that it was stronger than their criticism. She returned to school with a new confidence that surprised everyone, including herself. She rejoined the drama club, auditioned for the spring play, and got the lead role, not despite her scars, but because her performance had a depth and authenticity that impressed the directors. Your experiences gave you something most teenage actresses don't have, her drama teacher told her. You understand pain, resilience, and genuine emotion. That makes you a powerful performer. Jessica began speaking at burn camps and support groups for young people with visible differences. She always wore Steve's jacket to these events, altered to fit her properly, but still recognizable, and it had become a symbol of confidence, reclaimed and beauty redefined. 6 months after the Family Feud episode aired, Jessica was invited to speak at a conference for plastic surgeons and burn treatment specialists. Standing at the podium before an audience of medical professionals, she wore Steve's jacket over a dress that didn't try to hide her scars. When I was recovering from my burns, she told the audience, everyone focused on making me look as close to normal as possible. The treatments, the surgeries, the therapies, they were all about restoration, about getting back to who I was before. She paused, looking out at the doctors and nurses who had dedicated their careers to helping people like her. But what I learned is that sometimes the goal shouldn't be getting back to who you were before. Sometimes the goal should be becoming who you're meant to be after. My scars aren't a mistake that needs to be erased. They're part of my story. They're proof of what I survived. They're evidence of my strength. The audience was completely attentive. I'm not saying medical treatment isn't important. It absolutely is. But I think we also need to help patients understand that their worth isn't determined by how successfully we can make them look like they did before their trauma. Sometimes, the most beautiful outcome is helping them see that they're beautiful exactly as they are now. The standing ovation that followed led to discussions about incorporating psychological support and self-acceptance counseling into burn treatment protocols. Several hospitals began using Jessica's story as part of their patient education programs. Today, Jessica Parker is a senior in high school, planning to study psychology and advocacy in college. She's become a sought-after speaker on topics of resilience, self-acceptance, and redefining beauty standards. She's been featured in magazines, not as an inspiration story, but as a young woman with important things to say about society's relationship with physical difference. She still has difficult days, moments when the mirror feels unkind or when strangers' stares cut deep. But she's learned that healing isn't about reaching a destination where you never doubt yourself. It's about building the strength to choose self-love, even when self-doubt visits. The jacket from Steve Harvey hangs in her closet, but she wears it regularly to speaking engagements, to important events, to moments when she needs to remember her own strength. It's become more than clothing. It's a reminder that beauty is something you decide for yourself, not something others determine for you. Her relationship with mirrors has evolved too. She no longer sees an enemy in her reflection. Instead, she sees a young woman who survived something terrible and chose to thrive anyway. She sees scars that tell a story of survival. She sees eyes that have known pain but chosen hope. She sees beauty that goes deeper than skin, that radiates from the inside out. In her senior quote for the yearbook, Jessica wrote, "Beauty isn't about perfection, it's about authenticity. It's about kindness. It's about the courage to be yourself, scars and all. Real beauty is something you decide for yourself, and once you decide it, no one can take it away from you. Because sometimes, the most beautiful people are those who have learned that true beauty isn't about what you look like. It's about who you are, how you treat others, and the love you bring to the world." And Jessica Parker, scars and all, had learned to see herself as exactly that, beautiful.